Hi, I'm Jason with 3D Printing Canada. Today we're going to be unboxing our first shipment of the Creality CR-10s. All right, I've got a CR-10s here and let's open her up. So first things first, we have the base, assuming you opened it up right side up. Put that there. Box of goodies, we'll open that in a moment. The control box and the gantry. They've packaged it really well so the bed doesn't slide around. You'll notice that the wheels underneath the bed are probably quite loose. They'll need to be tightened before you attempt to print anything. You'll also notice the hot end sometimes is a little wiggly. That's by design so it doesn't get damaged in shipping. There's an eccentric nut on the bottom here that will need to be twisted to tighten that thing up. There's also some foam behind the lead screws. Make sure they don't get bent in transit. It's always a good idea to check those too. Spin them manually a couple times to see that they're not bent. No, they look good. Take the glass off the bed as well. We're gonna have to flip this over to tighten the wheels underneath. Now let's flip it right over. One of the upgrades Creality has made in the newest shipment of the CR-10s is they've insulated the hotbed underneath with some foil-backed kind of bubble wrap type stuff. Helps heat the bed a little bit quicker and maintain temperature better. It's one of the things Creality has been known for, is listening to the user community and making incremental improvements where they see fit. One of the first examples of that, you'll see underneath the bed here, there is a strain relief right here that everybody was printing initially, but Creality decided to include that as part of the standard model. All right. Just checking the bottom wheels. These are rather tight. These ones are a little bit loose. So as you can see here, when you turn an individual wheel, the entire bed should slide back and forth. There should be enough traction on each. And you can see I'm moving this one and the bed's not moving at all. So that means we'll just need to make sure that those are tight first. Let's open up our box of goodies now. We have our little scraper, the assembly instructions, a couple bags of goodies, some of which are spare parts. They include a spare nozzle. There'll be the bolts for assembling the brackets, the plastic little infill for the extrusions themselves, a power cord, of course. These are the angle brackets that attach the gantry to the base. A sample roll of filament, which I believe is from CC Tree. Snips, wrenches, Allen keys, everything we need for assembly here. Complementary USB cable, and a filament roll holder. It's a USB stick SD card reader, an 8 GB SanDisk SD card, and the filament runout sensor. A bowden tube and a nozzle cleaning device. They also include this roll of masking tape. I don't recommend you use this. I recommend you go to the hardware store and get your standard blue painter's tape instead. So let's get assembling. We're gonna have to get out our Allen keys here. The nice thing about Creality, and I know a couple other printers offer it as well, is they give you every tool you could possibly need for the assembly. The first thing that I would do is take your Allen key and wrench and make sure that these three wheels on the right with the eccentric nuts are tight enough that the entire base moves when you wiggle any individual wheel. You can see some of these are a little bit loose right now. Now that I've tightened that nut, you can see that it moves the entire base. There shouldn't be any resistance, just enough that it moves freely. This one's too loose. There we go. This one's loose. Perfect. Now over time you will see a little bit of buildup on these wheels as they slide back and forth and bed into the track. That's completely normal. I know a lot of people ask questions about that, but don't be alarmed. Perfect. So the bed is now done. Creality has also changed the feet that they use on the base. They're not quite as high as they used to be. They're a little flatter, a little softer, so they should help with dampening vibrations and sound into the table a little bit. You may want to read through the instructions. I'll just skip that step for now. All right, next step, we're going to put the gantry onto the base. We use our new snips to snip these zip ties. These zip ties are placed to make sure that the Z-axis doesn't move around during transit. This goes this way. So these two steppers right here should be facing the same side as the stepper on the base, and they line up with the screw or drill holes in the bottom frame. This part's a little bit tricky, bolting this in. I find it's easiest to shift the entire printer so that half of it is hanging off the table, and then you can get your Allen key in underneath. In the goodie bags here, there will be two T-brackets. These are used to reinforce the connection between the Z-axis and the base frame. There's also the Z end stop and some thumb screws and M5 screws or M5 socket cap bolts. So on the underside here, you want to just loosely tighten these two socket cap bolts so that they're holding the gantry firm, but allowing a little bit of play, because we'll make sure that it's all squared up before we give them a final tightening. On the side with the x-axis stepper, you will place the z-axis end stop like this. And on the other side, you just place the normal T bracket. When I went to attach the brackets that reinforce the gantry to the base, I noticed that they've made some changes. Creality's made some improvements to their manual, but on the assembly page, you will notice that there are two different brackets shown here where the Z end stop is, and now it's combined into a single bracket. The other difference is they no longer use T-nuts or hammer nuts to secure it to the frame. They've actually tapped the frame. So now you'll use these little screws here to secure it to the frame, 3 on each side. So just ignore the manual when it comes to this step. Again, don't over tighten them. We're going to leave them a little bit loose for now so that we can do a final adjustment once we've got both sides attached. On this side, I need to move the Z-axis up a little bit to give me some clearance. Now that we've got it attached, as I said, leave it loose. Make sure that it is square to the base frame as much as possible. And then give the side brackets a final torque. And then move it to the end of the table, hanging over the edge to get the socket cap screws that are underneath the frame. Now that the two are attached, make sure that everything moves smoothly. Only move them slowly, especially when the cables are attached to the control box. Moving them too quickly can actually fry your board. All right. I'm going to check these wheels as well to make sure moving each wheel smoothly moves the x-axis and that there's no catches or flat spots in the wheels. That's nice and smooth. All right. Next, we're going to assemble, or attach rather, the control box. Every one of these cables is labeled. You'll see a little tag on each. This one is for X. And they match up with the corresponding stepper motors, being Z at the bottom, X along the side here, and the extruder, or E, at the back. There's a few different models of the extruder lever on the CR-10s. This one has the black injection molded plastic. They've gone from plastic to aluminum to plastic again. They all work equally well. Each of these aircraft connectors only connect to one spot on the control box. They have a different number of connections. One has 4. The 4 is for the Y-axis, or rather the bed heater. We can also connect the bowden tube to the extruder. Make sure you press it in all the way so that you hear a click and that you should not be able to pull it out. You may notice that the one cable here has a little circuit board attached to it. This is in case you don't want to use the filament runout sensor. We're going to be using that sensor just to play it safe, so I'll take this off and set it aside. The runout sensor is this guy here, and it just press fits onto the side of the extruder bracket. Press fits right there, and you feed the filament in the side and out the other side. Now we're just going to line up each of these cables with the corresponding components. Z-axis is along the side. The smaller of the two plugs is for the end stop. The larger one, labeled Z, is for the stepper motor. And there will be another one labeled Z. It's rather long for the other side. The cable that we just took off of the small circuit board, the little short circuit board for the filament detector, we will plug into that we just press fit on here. X, X, and E. So these are for the X-axis limit switch, which is hidden underneath this bracket here. The larger X is for the stepper motor itself. And E is for the extruder. Last, we have another Y-axis set of cables, the larger for the stepper motor and the smaller for the limit switch. And they go right on the back here. There we go. Now we're ready to add the glass bed back onto the aluminum portion of the bed. We'll use the 4 binder clips that we took off earlier to do so. Place the binder clips just a little bit in from the corner so when you do your bed leveling, they don't come into contact with the nozzle. All right, we've got everything here assembled, all the connections made. The last thing to do is attach our filament spool holder to the control box. You can optionally attach it up here using the 2 hammer T-nuts and M5 screws. Creality provides thumb screws for this purpose. And some people like to have it this way. I prefer to have it on this side. And then this unscrews from here and slide it through. All right. Last thing to do is to just go over once more, make sure all of your screws are tight, even the screws you didn't assemble, make sure they came tight from the factory, specifically the Y-axis tension, the X-axis wheels along here, the roller here, and there's nothing to tighten on this side. On the back, you want to make sure that the middle rail of the frame is attached securely, and the screws at the top here as well. So make sure you've tightened all of the screws on the unit except for the 2 screws on either side of the lead screws for the Z-axis. You want to make sure that these screws are loose, but not loose enough that they wiggle around. This one's just a little bit loose. Over tightening these can cause binding in the Z-axis and affect your prints. Now we're ready to load up the filament and get started printing on the Creality CR-10s. Hopefully that was helpful. Remember to like, subscribe, and comment below and let us know what you'd like us to print using the CR-10s in our next filament review. Thanks for watching.